Starting in a minute. Or actually less than a minute. Hello everyone.
Hello everyone.
A little bit of a gathering time.
It's also a good opportunity to iron out the technical kinks. I think the LinkedIn title.
Oh, we haven't connected Substack.
I did, and I invited you. Yeah, Substack is good. I took care of it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't see it in the list history.
I know that's what I mentioned was buggy. Yeah.
I have accepted it right now, so let me...
Yeah, all good. I have Substack open. Hey guys on Substack. Hey Manny, hey Glenn, hey Jose, Vladi.
As soon as I go on the link, it basically pushes me onto my dashboard. What's that? I can't open it. Do you have a link for me?
Yes, of course. Substack. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will try.
Yeah, it's good to monitor that chat there. They can hear us. Yeah, I can see that you joined now on Substack.
Yeah, but I instantly leave to my dashboard. The invite is not longer available.
Oh yeah, maybe because we've started, you can't no longer broadcast.
But I just want to watch it.
No, that's okay. Then just watch it with the link.
I can't. That's the issue.
I see. Well.
We were talking about bugs today. We have so many bugs.
You can't watch today's stream.
Seriously.
Oh. Good afternoon, everybody. Taking the opportunity to announce TDD February. It's sort of a tradition. I'll do it less formally this year because I have been super active writing on Substack. We've been streaming so much and I've been coaching so much that sort of took up all of my time. And I get a feeling people don't read anymore.
What do you mean with read?
As in they just summarize whatever they're reading with an AI tool. Makes me sort of not appreciate or not see the value of like long form writing as much as I used to. I could be wrong though, but it's yeah. Coaching is another matter. How are you doing today, Adrian?
I'm good. A little bit cold, but good.
Yeah, I can hear it in your voice. You good for the hour for the stream?
Yeah.
Should take it a bit easier.
So
Jose says he still reads a lot. Maxwell, hello.
I actually switched a lot to listen. So
As in, do you sit at home and listen, or do you walk, drive?
I do always things. I can't sit down in silence. That's something never really worked out for me very well. So when I'm going for a run, I either listen to podcasts, audiobooks, mostly nonfiction, or having mentoring sessions. So I give mentoring sessions while I'm doing my sport actually outside. That's interesting. I do, yeah.
Do you manage to focus? I mean, it's casual, right? Like you're having a conversation. You're not really taking notes. You're not.
It's mentoring anyway. It's like.
But it's leadership, right? It's not.
It's leadership, so you don't really need to take notes. So I couldn't work if I need to take notes when it comes to a person. So this is the reason why I don't have too many mentees at the same time. So I want to be in their problem space. So I don't really do coaching, even though I use the terminology sometimes like you do. I'm more either mentee or fellow. So I'm with the team or talking to someone in the team, but I'm not really I don't have a coaching program or something like that.
I use coaching in the same way you use the term fellow. Like I'm part of a team. I'm not really, coaching a leader and then we don't talk about the team. Like, no, we have an NDA signed and it's about work. It's about the product, not about them like in a bubble. What keeps coming up from my work is this focus on automation and TDD and AI. Most of my teams are like super active on AI, it took some time, right? It took some time. They were like hesitant, and then I think just social media pressure, it just picks up, and like over 60% of engineers are like now heavy Claude users, and specifically Claude. And I see Copilot in PRs, CodeRabbit, CodeScene, which I approve of, and a bunch of Sentry MCPs, linear MCPs, project management. Miro, for some reason, isn't as tactile as I would like. But it all brings me back to this idea of automation, of I would love to be able to just tell an AI to go test the application, rather than having to write code for that. That is still an sort of far out problem that engineers, or at least AI savvy teams, are leaning towards, at least the writing side, to take away the boring part of writing tests, or at least planning them into their flow. So TDD, like, and how I coach TDD, has shifted a little bit, especially now in the past few months, in the past half year, I would say. Blaze, hello. It says, I agree with the opinion on long form writing. We're going back to handbooks and not style books. Yeah, like I used to write long articles on Substack explaining everything. I even teased a paid sort of private section on, and nobody reads them. Like, people complain when I don't write, but then when I do write, nobody reads them.
Just write notes then. One-liners.
Yeah. I'm changing the format, but it's really then hard to deliver connected topics. It's not like, if I wrote a book and you bought the book and then you read the book start to finish, no problem. Like, that's why I have my booklet on Gumroad. The no nonsense TDD booklet that I sort of update about this time of year every year. But long form, it's really difficult to sort of convey these complex ideas. And I don't want to talk too much about, spend a few months researching AI topics when AI is such a moving target right now. I shared some opinions about AI last year, and they're no longer relevant. Prompts, toolchain hacks, like what you can do to connect things together, simplify context windows, prompts, and it's irrelevant. The models have moved on. The user interface, like how you interface with AIs, has evolved in a way that's non-recognizable to last year. Agents have become reliable in a way.
I really remember all the life hack guys who actually brought those are my prompts, right? I share them. I write a book about the prompts in the very early days of ChatGPT.
Yeah, prompt libraries, because it's kind of like skills for Claude without really the hard guarantees.
I personally think you don't understand AI if you have a set of prompts. It is not. We don't write shell scripts anymore. It's you don't need a library of code snippets or something like that. Just ask and tell what you want.
It feels like shell scripts to me, but in a very dynamic and fluid way, not just.
No, but it's not necessary. So you have context files in the background if you don't.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. That's a prompt file.
And it's like AI is good for me when I say I have this problem. The client had this problem. This is the ticket. Screenshot of the ticket. Just take a look what it is.
Yeah.
Probably in this file, and then
it's funny because
that's from the AI.
It's funny. There are moments, because Blaze has a question that is relevant to what I was about to say, which is, what is the difference between coach, trainer, and mentor? And I do wear all three hats with my fellows. So a trainer, I would say, is you're conveying a skill, right? Where, for example, you have a workshop. It's a great question, by the way. You're conveying a skill. I want to learn TDD. I train you TDD. Like the formal approach, the formality, the process. Mentoring is then I'm on a team doesn't want to do TDD, I want to do TDD, how should I grow, what are my problems, where am I my worst enemy? That's sort of mentoring. How should I grow, what should I focus on?
Mentor is a form of reflecting conversations. The current issues of the person today, you talk about those.
And yes, and more, it's more what's showing up, what can we add as a learning crutch to your activities, or what is there from your activities that we can learn and sort of monitor as a good habit. It's sort of like helping, somebody is helping you, they've done it before, and they're being an accountability buddy with you. That's mentoring. Coaching, the line where I draw on coaching is this example of, you're a smart engineer, you know how to do TDD. You see the need to do TDD. You would like to have more automation, more trust in the pipeline. Why aren't you doing it? And then staying with that question, because maybe they'll freak out. Maybe they'll say, I don't have time, or then this is not helpful to me. Then they have like a completely irrational emotional response to why we're not doing it. And then I help them explore and stay in that, like dilute that emotion and stay there. So there's almost an element of therapy, but we're not doing anything cognitive behavioral therapy-esque. It literally just staying with the pain of the team of, hey, when we bring up a challenge, our A players are applying too much pressure, our B players are getting too defensive, and it's creating this weird irrational response from the team that makes progress difficult. And then we're sitting down and working one-on-one and working team-wise and working leadership-wise of trying to prod at this problem from this amorphous thing from all directions, incentives, personal, team-wise, etc. But I am coaching an entire team or an entire division, not just one person. So that's my bias is there. Like coaching with one person is almost as ineffective as training, but it can be very helpful if you're doing it from all directions with that one person, right? So if you're also helping them incentivize their team, you're also upskilling them. You're also upskilling them how to teach it to their team, not just how to practice it for themselves.
Good.
What I wanted to
mention, what does it say?
Yes. What I wanted to say is that Blaise asked, what is training? What is coaching? What is mentoring? When it comes to automation, usually the question comes up of, hey, why aren't we releasing faster? Or when will this be done? Or why do we have so many bugs? Or product wants to do too many things at once? Or we want AI, CEO is pushing AI usage. We all know that. I think we're all in those kinds of environments. And they're kind of right and kind of wrong. And there is always this sort of tendency to want to go faster. And TDD has this sort of stigma. This is how I want to now segue into this conversation. TDD has the stigma that it will slow me down. But, as a TDD practitioner, the reason I'm doing it is because it speeds me up. And people often highlight this framing of, okay, we just had a bad release, we need to stop everything and focus on quality. That is the worst way about it, because it actually slows you down. It's like, I need to, we need to speed up, so we're going to speed up by slowing down. It's a cute metaphor, especially if you know the what is it, the saying of slow is smooth, smooth is fast, or however it goes. But it comes from this idea of teams are normally used to, especially if you do a lot of manual testing, sort of their brain is active on recent events, and they have a very difficult time closing their feedback loop. So what happens is they normally jump very fast, release something to production, and they reward themselves for having released it, having created the PR, having shipped it. And then they stumble, and then they take two steps back, work in progress explodes because they're working on something else, and there's a bug fix, and there's a review in progress. And they delude themselves into thinking that that's productive, right? They see the fast step forward, but they don't see the 2 steps back. And the process of TDD, like the coaching side of TDD, that I always work with the most with engineers is that TDD is writing down in formal, like writing, what those things are that would force you to take steps back. What are the annoying things to debug? What are the annoying things to fix? What are the annoying things to check? And write them down. And then we build from there. Then we start building out that first, and then we can explore outwards from that, because it's proof that we have a risk mitigation strategy, right? So if and it changes this mindset of we need to keep talking to each other as if you haven't proven that you have a risk mitigation strategy, I will assume you'll be off track, behind schedule, and just constantly be unavailable because you'll have reports of bugs or reports of bad behavior on production systems. And that's very difficult for engineers to sort of internalize. To get comfortable with this idea that how they've been working is actually much more risky than they thought. And they sort of get a little bit of stage fright of, okay, well, if it's been risky, then I won't touch anything, and we go on a feature branch, and we test everything manually twice. And that is then the response that propagates the bad behavior. If you don't treat it as if it's an illness, but if you don't actually nurture that process, that hesitation directly with the team.
So it requires, for me, a culture where people understand that they're actually doing a quality work, which means that they're actually there. So there should be an alignment between business and development in order to make it right. So if you're constantly pushing from top down the development team to deliver on deadline, and make that the biggest reward factor. So then the people won't be incentivized to take a look for ownership in terms of quality long term. So they won't say that, okay, maybe I can't deliver it to the deadline this evening because I'm doing it right now, but then it's done. Instead of I'm making it quick right now, then I'm fixing it over the next 3 days, which is accumulated longer than the actual implementation in the first run. It can fail as well, but is less likely to do so. And overall, that's the idea of TDD, is that it actually becomes a more stable process, more predictable process, but that needs to be understood up there as well. So that is what I see is most, in my personal opinion, which is the driving factor that TDD is mostly like one guy is using TDD, the other three don't. That's what I see. Is based on how much time they have to develop.
I'm always uncomfortable comparing. I'm a TDDer, you're not a TDDer, so we will just compare speeds. I think, because if you're gambling and you're not writing tests first and you get lucky, you will create the impression that it was actually faster. But you can do the wrong process and get lucky, and I can do the right process and get unlucky. And just that possibility creates so much noise in the system that makes it very difficult to compare in a team, especially if they can influence each other. Like the TDDer can actually accidentally be covering the non-TDDers shortcomings. On the same team, that's very. I would always do that. I would always do those comparison frames on a team level. Individually, it's always annoying. I see LinkedIn comments are working as well.
Yeah, but LinkedIn network isn't. So.
Can I show it on stream? If I can click it, right?
You can click it.
Should work. It works. You probably mean going fast is actually slower later on. Going slower in the beginning actually makes you faster. No, that's not what I meant. I meant there is an immediate speed improvement available to you, and that's what we need to focus on. Like if adopting TDD slows you down, you're doing something wrong. You should immediately treat that as a problem. And I see most TDD sort of initiatives or any kind of continuous integration, continuous delivery initiatives fail because people are like, oh, yeah, we started doing that and now production work is a lot slower, but that's normal because we're trying out some new process. And they ignore the feedback. Like the feedback is, we tried this new thing and now we're slower. And that feedback needs to be acted upon. It shouldn't be slower, right? And people usually give up because, okay, it's slower and then it'll speed us up later. I don't want to work under those conditions. Like it has to be fast now and faster later, right? Because I'm doing cost savings, right? Like it needs to kick in now. If I'm taking on more credit now, what, I will continue paying it off faster later? That doesn't make sense. So this idea that there's a learning curve or that there's a sort of adoption curve to you start doing TDD and things slow down, I don't think that's true. Like that's
the reality to most companies, at least in their minds.
I want to be more concrete about what I'm talking about. I'm not saying it's not true that they slow down, but the slowing down is not a desired learning crutch effect. The slowing down is a problem that needs to be handled immediately. You adopt TDD, you slow down. Okay, that slowdown is feedback. It has to be addressed immediately. It won't get better over time. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, you ignoring the slowdown and you're like, okay, let's keep doing TDD until the speed kicks in. That's La La Land. That's not gonna happen. The slowdown is the manifestation of what you've been doing normally, but you're making it visible. So it's just surfacing the pain that was naturally there. Let me give a concrete. Here's a follow-up question. So let's maybe go with the audience today. Very good audience today, by the way. I'm really proud of you guys. We have a lot of people on LinkedIn. We have about 20 people on Substack, and questions and comments are coming in. Oh, this makes me really happy. I've got the next one. From Jakob again. Oh, you did put it on screen. I'm sorry.
You caused the dopamine kick, and the aura ring on his hand just showed it.
What's your one most important tip to get this idea of TDD and its benefits into engineers' minds who may not be too familiar with it or not practicing it on a daily basis? I would say don't bother. Like, focus on yourself. Like, don't, this idea that I'm not practicing TDD because my coworkers aren't, so I will practice it once we all adopt it. How do I convince my coworkers? I think that's pointless.
But Jakob is a engineering lead, so tech lead. So he's asking, I think, in the POV of a CTO.
Look, put yourself in the shoes of a CTO for whom TDD is normal and have clear expectations of TDD from the team. You don't have to force them, but just communicate. If we were doing TDD, I would talk about tickets in the context of let's create a testing plan, and if it turns out to have more than 2 or 3 acceptance criteria, let's split it up. And then if I'm not in the room, I would always voice this question of, hey, did we narrow down the acceptance criteria to one dominant one? Did we have a clear test plan? Is a test plan being ordered into a release plan in the right order? I would just start having those conversations, because those are the normal conversations you're having when you're practicing TDD or something equivalent. It doesn't have to be TDD. It can be event modeling, right? Like, there are multiple formal processes that result in you having examples, scenarios, and a sort of implementation order, right? So the connection between feature maturity and release plan order. The two that I use the most are TDD and event modeling. They don't overlap completely. Like, it's not a complete, you can do both or just one or just the other. But that's how, like, rather than teaching them TDD, I would ask them, well, what benefits does TDD provide? Like, TDD provides the benefit that we have written down our acceptance criteria, codified it, we created a scaffold that tests our acceptance criteria passing, and then we've gone into smaller tests that help us navigate the space and implement it in, ideally, any increasing level of complexity or increasing level of value. Turn that into a release plan, and then you check them for progress on it. But that's the easy side. That's if you have a very pliable, open-minded A-player team. If you have a mix of A players and B players, and there's somebody who's a Gen Zer who's vibe coding everything, and you have a Gen Xer who tried testing and it never works and it's a waste of time, then it's of course a bit more realistic, but also harder. And when the team is a little bit more opinionated, let's say, about resisting these kinds of things, what I would focus on is a strong litmus test that I use with engineering leaders per se is there's a bug and then there's like two things happening when there's a huge bug in production. When something breaks in production, there's usually two problems. Leaders want to talk about who's going to fix the bug, triage, are we going to fix it, not fix it, hack it together, test cover, yada, yada, yada. And the second problem is we need those features and this bug fix. We can't refactor both. Let's try to prevent it in the future and let's do our best, but let's keep moving forward. And those two conversations are like a flashbang to the team. They make it difficult to focus on the important thing. I always step in because I'm usually in the room coaching the team, shadowing the call or the stand-up or just a water cooler conversation. And the engineering leader is there, or the product manager is there, and the engineers are there. And I usually step in and say, guys, let's reframe this, right? Because we're trying to vent our frustration without blaming anybody, which means we're sort of yelling into the room and we're creating this echo chamber, just vent our ego problems of I broke this or you broke that, or we need to PR and feature gate more, to review more often, and that's the wrong way. I've never found that to work. What does work is reminding the team that's what I usually do, is that, hey, there's actually only two problems that we need to solve. A, the desired behavior that we want was not expressed in writing, right? So it's not written down what exactly this feature needs to do, only that we wanted it. And we didn't separate enough the correct from the incorrect behaviors in an automated test. That's one idea, right? So that's the pre-testing idea. There was no test plan. It was not written down. It was implied in a ticket title, never written down. And then when the engineer figured it out, they just implemented it without actually clarifying their intent first. The second problem is, and which is the more concrete one, is to teach the team that, hey, we deployed a bug. We made a bug. And when we rolled the bug out, the pipeline was green. And you get the team used to thinking, if the pipeline was green, when we rolled out a bug, we need to turn that into a red, and we need to put that concrete red into the pipeline. And then we undo the bug fix and we check if the red fails. And then we put the fix back in and it should turn green. And it should only turn red for that thing, and it should only turn green once we have added the fix back. And to get them used to this process. And this process, if you do it after a bug fix, is so tedious that then everybody starts thinking, wait, we can just do it from the beginning. And then that behavior of, okay, hang on, I don't have to do this twice, I can just do it from the beginning. That is then TDD. But you create the demand first. You just show them the problem space, you show them the solution immediately, and then you just create this natural demand for TDD Inc. or something similar. It doesn't have to be TDD. You can do a TDD, you can do BDD with just the plan side, right? Of just using non-engineers or product managers nowadays, vibe coding with Claude, a test plan, and you just leave it there. And then the engineers figure out which tests to actually write, which to convert into something else, etc. I find that to be very pragmatic, helpful, and sort of you show up on Monday, you formulate this plan, and you can start doing it on Monday, Tuesday. Like, it doesn't have to have that sort of learning curve adoption for like months and months and months where there's this sort of slowing down effect. That slowing down effect is always undesired. I'm monologuing a bit.
Yeah. You are in explaining mode right now.
Yeah.
Not in conversation mode.
Yeah, I don't like that.
But there's another comment. So you can go on explaining. So basically, it's very easy if you frame it on result orientation. You incorporate ACs, be able to catch edge cases more early on, and then way also being able to catch more potential issues up front compared to the non-TDD way, as additional manual testing could be avoided. What do you think about that?
I think I would correct immediately that idea of edge cases. I don't care about edge cases. I only care about the main case. If I'm doing acceptance criteria first, I only care about the main case, right? So invert the main case. We add a feature for, I don't know, a special kind of KYC for Austrian customers. Then steps are Austrian customer did not do KYC. They get the request to do KYC. They do the KYC. They submit their photo. We review it. KYC is successful for Austrian customers, right? The acceptance criteria is everything that happens along these 6 steps. Not edge cases, not what happens if they don't have their front-facing camera. What happens if they upload a picture of a dog? I don't care about the edge cases. It's just the main path written down in the correct order with the correct expectations and codified in such a way that the system basically tells you, no, the point of TDD is to use your tests, what runs and what doesn't run, as a sort of project management tool of, the feature is done when it does this, and it does this, and it does this, and it does this, and it does this. Now, usually you write a test, implement it, write a test, implement it, write a test, implement it.
How do you handle then the edge cases for yourself?
The edge cases you handle once you've figured out the main cases. Like I wouldn't handle edge cases unless I have proof that the main case is working. Because if the main case is not test covered, then me trying to handle edge cases might break the main case. And if I need to have a scaffold on one end, I would rather have a scaffold for making sure the main case works and then explore edge cases rather than have a scaffold for division by 0, but then have no guarantee that it actually works. Right? So I would never, people start with edge cases. Right? A good example would be you create an API and then it says there's a test for when the request is invalid, it shows the correct error. And it's like, why?
Okay, but when you have implemented, let's say the main case, happy path, happy negative path, these kind of things. If you have done that, you can go for the obvious edge cases. I would say so. That
so I'm not talking about implementation. I'm talking about turning the test plan, which is something like a story or a ticket in your project management software, into a test, into executable tests. Usually that's code in a sort of unit testing framework, library, Playwright, anything, Cypress, XUnit, retest. And then using the tests primarily for critical path behavior, for positive critical path behavior. And focus only on edge cases when they arise to codify them, right? So we want the tests codified. You can implement whatever you want, but I want the tests to declare the positive happy path first. Because if we don't have that, then I don't care that it doesn't. If I haven't implemented division, I don't care what the error for division by 0 should be. I want to do division first, and then I can handle the edge case. But if I start with the edge case error, I don't care about the other part if I haven't proven that it actually works correctly yet.
But that wasn't the topic, so there is nothing written about start with the edge case first. It was just a...
No, so that's what I mean. I would... No, because he did say...
catching them early on, because that's a...
Catching them early on, and that's... By that point, it's already too late. Like, that's not the point, right? So... I would agree with Jakob is that it's fairly easy to frame it towards the result orientation. So result in the sense of what behavior do we want from the engineering team? What behavior do we want to incentivize? What kind of discipline we would like to reward? What kind of skills we would like the new generations or the sort of the mentoring to be focused on, the training to be focused on? But it's not there.
It wasn't me.
That was weird. We both disconnected at the same time.
I didn't. You did.
I did. Okay. I see you. I see Adrian too has joined. So. Okay. I
don't know. It happened to me last week as well. So
yes, because I noticed.
So the client stays. Everything stays. It just
I mean, music is still working. I'm happy. I like the background music.
Okay. So it is some form of issue with the actual transmit of the video signal. The app itself runs still.
Yeah, it's like the app killed itself and restarted without refreshing my tab. Anyway, good. Maxwell also had this question of which step of TDD is good to use AI and how. And now we're sort of getting there. So he said able to catch more potential issues up front. So I don't care about potential issues. Right? Like I don't want to, I do the zombies approach of let's do the simple stuff. Does the feature work? Does the feature not work? What is the obvious non-working behavior? And then we get it working, and then we talk about edge cases, right? So I don't care about this idea of, okay, we set up a KYC process, it uses your front camera. We get that working first, and then we talk about the edge case where you're using it on a mobile device that doesn't have a camera, or that doesn't have a front-facing camera, that doesn't have a face camera. It only has that way-facing camera, right? Because then you can't watch the interface when you're, right? Like that's an edge case. I don't want us to catch that edge case because it might be product related. And I don't care about, I have a backend system and a front-end system, and the edge cases are how they talk to each other. That's only for the developer. It's only for the developer for, hey, if you're changing something in the front-end API and you're calling me differently, I want to give you good errors so that you can correct your ways more quickly, but it's not valuable to the user. Like that's an edge case of giving good, high quality, providing a high degree, a high standard for developer experience. That might be an edge case. That might be a sort of more systems thinking, or in the front end world, having a reliable design system or a reliable sort of pattern approach to sharing hooks between components or hook state between components, right? So that you have context providers don't create this like huge mess, or stores, etc. So from like a leader perspective, I wouldn't say, how do I get my team to do TDD? I would say, just have the conversations for the outcomes that you naturally want, right? So did we have proof of simplicity, right? This is the same thing that we did with like people car, dark agile or dark scrum or fall like scrum fall, etc. about story point estimation. About is it a 3, is it a 5, is it a 6, is it a 7, and then they want to come up with a number, and then they convert the number to a number of weeks or days or hours. But that's not the point. The point about that kind of conversation is it exactly one scenario, right? Is it exactly one scenario without edge cases? That's what we want to have a conversation about. Like, can we express what we want as a series of scenarios without edge cases and have a conversation that way without being too technical? And then once they get simple enough, then we can get technical with a key small group of people. That's the idea. If we haven't done that homework, that's where I would start, right? So did we prove simplicity? Did we say, okay, it doesn't do X right now, we want it to do X when this happens? And then when that happens, that is something that we can trigger on the read replica side of the projections. And then that's another slice. And then the third slice is whenever that data changes, it impacts this UI and that UI and this field and that text box and this email, right? So to get it down to that level of simplicity, take care of the infra for that, and then you build it into that kind of system. And then you have tests for each step, for the integration, for the connecting the dots for the glue code. I would never. I realize we didn't answer Max or Jacob yet. Jacob had a fourth follow-up. Would you then anyway add edge cases coverage later on as soon as some pop up? I wouldn't even. Hi, Mike. Yes, we're live. We're on Twitch. Adrian, you connected. Nice.
Yeah, this is live.
Cool.
Proof we are live.
Yeah, this is live. Hey.
Yeah, I've connected my Twitch because I'm doing more tech leadership content right now, and that's actually part of it.
So, a funny way is, Jacob is asking, would you then add edge cases coverage later or as soon as possible? Like, the whole point of TDD is not to get test coverage, right? The point isn't for every line of code to be test covered. It is a good consequence. If you're in the space where you're using more functional programming styles or more monadic programming styles where you have clear indications of your effects, of your side effects, of your sort of heavy I/O operations or asynchronous operations, right? So if you're using something like Rust, where that is formally possible, or a little bit more involved TypeScript structures, or using Elixir or F#, where that can be expressed more easily, or the new modern way of using C# or Kotlin, then sure, that is a lot easier to get all of that, side effects, and 100% test coverage. But in most languages, there will be a point where you will write code for a I/O boundary or a side effect boundary that is very difficult to type. It's very difficult to type this idea that when you call this function, it writes into the database, and that is what I'm testing. And it's a async void function. It's like you need to figure out what that means exactly, because then you usually reach for mocks, right? And then that's usually where the conversation breaks down of, hey, I'm building these like weird things that look like state monads, but they come from my mocking library, so it's not production code. And that's when the whole conversation gets really weird and very fuzzy, and people start complaining about fake tests and fuzzy tests and flaky tests. And that's where the sort of conversations usually breaks down. We don't pursue coverage per se. It's not valuable. Like the business will not make more money if you provide better test coverage. It is a good consequence of good engineering. But if you're not doing good engineering, coverage itself won't make you do good engineering. The coverage is a good side effect of good engineering. And magically forcing your team, who might not be doing the best kind of engineering that they're capable of, and telling them, hey, do TDD because it'll up our coverage, that's meh. I would frame that as an anti-goal. The way that I work with teams is I admit that we're not going to do training. Like, I'm not going to stop feature development that are the main OKRs or the main roadmap initiatives and put them in a box for 2 weeks or 2 days, have a 48-hour workshop on a kata where I teach them the skill, and then they go back on a deadline-driven system and expect them to magically understand that, right? So it is primarily this idea of when we're doing TDD for the first time, or I'm starting to have conversations with engineering leaders about getting the outcomes of TDD. It's mostly about, let's write as little tests as possible because you don't have the time for it, right? Because engineers who struggle with this also usually struggle with time management, with communication, the soft skills. They get distracted, they use Cloud Code too much or not enough, and then they have these like weird conversations with their CEO. So we are focusing primarily on, do we all agree on what the critical path is? Do we all agree on what the key features are, right? So key features are things where if they stop working, you would call up an engineer at 3 a.m. and you would wake up the entire team and have them fix it. That's the critical path, right? So what we want is for all of us to agree what the critical path is, what the components of the critical path are, which the important features of the critical path are, and what's not important, what's a nice to have on top of critical functionality. And then when something on the critical path breaks, we want the pipeline to be red. And when something on the critical path, the things that we know that can break, if we have proven that they're not breaking, that they're green. That's it. That's how we start. And we start with one test. I never start with this idea of, testing everything in the system is hard. So let's look at the code. The code is, there's a guard block. If input parameter is invalid, throw exception. And then there's all this complex I/O stuff. And then developers start with adding that one test for, hey, if input parameters are not valid, throw exception. If input parameters are valid, do not throw exception. And they start, they look at the implementation, they start top to bottom. They stuff on the top is usually a guard block, and they start the test that way. And it's an absolute waste of their time and talent, and it's a complete distraction, because we should be tackling this idea of, hey, why is all that important functionality look like a mess sort of inside the meat of the function? Why isn't it easily exposed and easily reasoned about from the outside? Why is it such a huge big thing rather than a series of small things that are stitched together? That's then the conversation you want to have, because if the ticket was never broken down, and the code was also this like humongous thing that was sort of cramped together. Are you having a conversation?
I need to talk to someone as well. Not all the time, man. You have 90% speaking time today.
But you told me I should pick a topic, and you're sick.
You should introduce the topic, not 50 minutes into the stream. No, all good, all good. All good. Now, I would say I would answer to that one, and then we go to the next topics.
Yeah.
I practice a little bit different, because most of my time when I do things, I'm either on the front end side or on the product side, which means that I can understand Jacob very good there, because we have corporate clients, right? And they tell us, so if I would just go for one feature, some models, thing, and the edge cases, which other people would see as edge cases, are actually normal cases. So we tend to have a lot of normal cases. And even though we would say they are edge cases, in reality, they don't happen often, but if they happens once,
you can lose.
They already make a meeting with us, so it is actually very critical.
Yes. Okay.
So that there we have the tendency, or develop the tendency, to actually have a lot of test cases. For example, we have a text field in our Cloudflare application. It does have 140 test cases for a text field.
Adrian, I would challenge the terminology here a little bit. If you have something that's
should clarify it so that we have a common denominator.
So when I talk about edge cases, I mean edge cases, right? As an edge. Okay, that's not helpful. I'm using the term to describe it.
There's actually
if you have an important scenario, a sub-scenario, where something fails, so we're not on the happy path, and you need to have that handled because it is critical to the client, because it is inappropriate or irresponsible or unprofessional or legally binding or financially tenuous to not handle it, then that's critical path. It's not an edge case, right? An edge case is an edge case would be, I am registering for your crypto application, for your crypto platform, and the database that I'm sharded to just ran out of disk space. That would be an edge case. I don't care about that scenario happening. There's some weird system level.
You mean scenarios which, if an error occurs, the chance that it reoccurs in the next time is basically zero.
No, I think if this space is full, it will keep happening. It's just that it is not the kind of edge case that the user would care about being handled well. That's what would be an edge case, right? So an unknown error has occurred, refresh the page. That's an edge case, right? I don't care. That's not sort of emotive.
Is that an edge case, or is it just very bad error handling?
It depends. If it happens all the time, I keep using this example in organizations that have triage problems. Is if it's, if a user has forgotten their password, and that happens once, and the forgot password flow, there is none, or it doesn't work, That's customer support and a bit of an incentive to build it, or a bit of an incentive that maybe our authentication provider had a bad day. Maybe we should switch. But if 1,000 people have password issues, that's product feedback. That is now happy path. That is important that does not happen. There is clearly something being incentivized by the application incorrectly. That is not an edge case. Like that is something that was mishandled. So I wouldn't, because it's difficult to talk about defects and bugs and what is an edge case and what is not an edge case if you haven't written down your primary case, right? So I always see developers go towards testing and TDD, and they are sort of starting with the edge cases, and it's not useful. You need to write down what is the primary case, what is the acceptance criteria, and then go from there to secondary behaviors, to integration concerns, to any kind of combinatorial behavior where you can combine it in different ways or have like different combinations of types of users or data, and then edge cases. But like not go from the edge cases inwards towards the final product. That usually doesn't end well, because like that horizon between the edge and the meat can be an endless activity, and you can spin in circles. You can go down a rabbit hole on one edge case and figure out that it doesn't actually lead to the happy path behavior, which it usually doesn't, right? It's disjunct. It's another axes.
You have several follow-up statements to your
on Twitch, actually. Wow, I'm not used to watching Twitch chat. Is that what's on screen right now?
Yeah, just take a look what is on screen. It's easy.
No, but I have to scroll up. You were talking about agents before. May I throw another one related to right now? I'd like to know how you prioritize your milestones when AI coding is integrated and complexity is not a prioritization parameter. Is that relevant? Is that on screen?
Yeah. No,
that's not on screen. That's what Mike asked.
Well, all messages are on screen right now.
Yeah, but there's more. I'm scrolling down in our studio window. So Mike asks, so breakable with no workaround, you mean? So look, we keep talking about coding as if there's only one path to the system, that there is something that you're building an API and there is you again. What's going on?
That's the first time today.
What's going on? So there isn't only one path to your system. There isn't only one, return 200 for an API call. There can be multiple reasons for successful requests. There can be multiple reasons for successful triggers from the application that are benign and idempotent. There can be multiple successful reasons for them to be non-idempotent behaviors. And there can be multiple error cases. When I talk about edge cases, I don't mean something that you would intrinsically care about. When I talk about edge cases, I mean things that can sort of blow up if they're not handled, but they don't need to be handled well. Because it's very rare for us to be working in software where all edge cases have to be handled. Like space grade software that needs to have multiple levels of redundancy and to guarantee correct operations. Most people don't work in such environments. If you do, of course, take this advice with a grain of salt. But generally speaking, your pipeline will be down because of misunderstandings, because the requirements were wrong, because the requirements were thought well and then written down incorrectly and misinterpreted and wrongly implemented, and then your Claude code took a dump, right? Like it's the compounding effect of misinterpretation, misunderstanding, and misprioritization often, right? So we don't even need to think about the mathematical proven edge cases. We just need tests primarily to check, hey, did I implement what I picked up from you? You told me to implement something. This is what I'm implementing. Did I implement that or did I make a whoopsie? Like, we're all already checking that level of, okay, with complete knowledge, with perfect knowledge of what I wanted to do and what I am capable of doing, did I make a mistake? Going down to that level first. And then we go a level higher. Did we misunderstand each other? Hey, product person, when you told me what to do, when you sort of gave me an idea of how we can serve the customer better, did I misunderstand? Did we use the same words for different things? Right? So then you build the code and it's a bit too late and then you have to change it. You rephrase the test, you rephrase the code, you re-implement it, maybe throw it away, maybe ask Cloud Code to sprinkle some magic. And then you go one step further. The customer said they wanted this feature. Once we gave them this feature, are they actually using it the way they said, or were they just complaining about a one-off? And we actually got the priority wrong. We actually got the impact wrong or the severity wrong, right? Those require tests. Those require tests for, hey, this is a one-off thing. This has to be stable. This doesn't have to be stable. But without being too vague, I'm monologuing again. No, because I keep reading the chat and like you guys are talking about something completely else, something completely different. Julius, hello. Christian, Emmanuel, hey, good to see you. To answer the AI question on Substack, in which step is AI good to use? I would generally use it for transcribing conversation. So for example, if you and I and the three of us, or the two of us and Mike and you, Max, now had this conversation on like a Gather Town call, I would transcribe this call. I would put the transcription into a project management MCP, and I would take the next steps and formulate them into a ticket, and I would extract the next step, the next acceptance criteria that makes sense to the customer from the ticket. That is what I would use AI for. I wouldn't then, after this meeting, sit down and write tickets in project management software. I wouldn't then sit down and try to recall the conversation and then open up WebStorm and start writing text. Now, I would ask the AI tool to say, okay, give me the obvious test plan, give me the obvious test shapes, give me the dump of the conversation, and give me the important, not important parts of the conversation so I can focus on the immediate next step.
Actually, I have something to add here. For PageBar, we implement the features for coaches. I've talked about that already. Nice. And I think that is very important as well for software development. And what I want to say is that there is a problem with the inertia between meetings. So you have a meeting, you talk about things, just what you said, and you have AI and you make something out of that, right? So the issue is that that's the one-sided thing. But the developer should learn that he or she can interact with the matter again, asynchronously, without getting into contact with someone, because getting into contact with someone is always this, don't disturb me, and these kind of things. This is, most environments have problems with that. AI should be like the bridge in between and help the people to do that. Why are you laughing?
I'm reading Mike's comment with a bit of delay.
Oh, good. No, so it's like that's important to actually have that so AI can fill that gap, so you don't lose momentum anymore and run into the inertia trap. And that is what I really like, and we should have more of that during the system. So we should build or feed an AI which helps us in between the team with the information, so we all can talk to an AI to not lose it, but actively. So everyone and every that conversation should be a conversation space. So it's a little bit like a Slack channel or Gather Town channel, which is observed by an AI. So if you ask the AI, what should I do today? The AI will tell you, yeah, you were talking yesterday about that. Just do it now. It's a little bit like that. Yeah. Let me quickly take a look.
It's also regarding the USB-A phenomenon. You can actually look at the USB stick and see which side is up.
First time is always wrong.
The correct
and then
side
second time is wrong as well.
Adrian, the correct side has holes.
This was the reason for USB-C. The only reason was...
Look, I pull out the cable and I can see that the cable is up that way. So on the way that it's up, the cable has holes.
Who is taking a look at the cable before I plug it in? Who? Type in chat. Who is doing that? No one. That's the reason why we have USB-C today.
This guy.
Yeah, it takes too much time. So you do it like correction is faster than actually looking at it, especially when the plug is under a table or something like. You need to take a photo of that while you're holding it. You don't do that. That's harsh reality.
So from Jacob's side, Jacob, you're talking about edge cases. Is your team doing TDD and getting distracted? Are you concerned that there is some non-functional requirement that you would like to capture? Is the edge case that you're talking about a non-functional requirement that is hard to test? Where are you coming from this? It would be nice to have some context. I think we need to wrap in like 10-15 minutes. Adrian?
I don't have a time limit today.
Yeah, I would like to. I have dinner soon, but like, it turned out to be a very good, easy, spontaneous conversation with the audience, and I always love these one-off episodes.
Yeah.
What I wouldn't mention is TDD is never the goal, right? Like, I never come into a team, coaching a team, and we're like, our biggest problem is we don't do TDD. Dennis, help us. TDD will solve all of our problems. Like that's silly. That's, it's a tool. You learn the tool. You can still misuse the tool. You may think that learning the tool will help you, but then if you don't know how to use it right, or if you misunderstood the context of your problem, it's not a huge step forward. Like it doesn't cover as much ground as you think it will. It's more about this idea that TDD, I use TDD as a litmus test for, if you guys can go from no TDD to full on TDD in a day, you're good. Like, I can tell very easily about your sort of friction to apply TDD of where the other problems are. Like, it's a good canary test, right? Like, canary in the coal mine kind of test. Like, if the canary dies, when we go deeper, there's either monoxide or CO2 or any kind of other gases that would make it very, very, very unsafe for a human to work there at that level. So it's just this, okay, apply TDD, and if nothing happens in 24 hours, I know that I got my work cut out for me. Like, the engineering leader probably doesn't have influence, or is incentivizing the wrong behaviors, and conversations might be focused around estimates and timelines rather than simplicity and complexity and risk mitigation, right? So when we do TDD, the point we do TDD is for two reasons. It's proof that we are mitigating risk of delivery, and it's proof that we have codified what we want from the pipeline into the pipeline. So with our best intentions, if we have implemented it correctly, then the pipeline will tell us when we make a mistake. It won't tell us if we're building the wrong product, but it does tell us when we make a mistake in building the product that we do want. Even if that product changes over time, even if you change your workforce over time, even if you go from Cloud to Gemini to anti-gravity and it starts hallucinating, the pipeline will help. That's the point. So when engineers are sort of under stress and they have very little confidence in the changes that they're releasing to production, it's usually because they have stigmatized themselves. They created this stigma where when they see the pipeline and it says green, it's not safe to deploy. Like the green, they never see the correct red. So the absence of red, they treat as, yeah, pipeline is green, but that doesn't mean it's safe to deploy. I still need to test this and this and this and this and this and this manually. And yesterday the pipeline was green and we still had that breaking change and that bug. So it's coming down to this realization that we need to shift conversations from project management software and did you test it to the pipeline. Does our pipeline detect this important issue? Is our pipeline capable of detecting it on a delivery level, on a functionality level, on a non-functional level? You're gonna have tests running in production as well as diagnostics. Like who said that the tests need to run on the dev? Tests can run in the pipeline on the moment you deploy, and you can do a diagnostic check. It's like, hey, pick a random user and run these things and then revert the changes, right? So it's just about the pipeline being able to automate really, really crucial, critical functionality and signal to you, hey, there's something looks weird. Right? So you normally find that organizations that have a natural need for TDD, when you deploy something, and then instead of continuing to work, you obsessively watch logs, or you obsessively look for, you're like, I call this looking for ghosts. Like you're watching the logs looking for an anomaly, and there is nothing wrong. You're just waiting for something to break. And you're just watching the logs looking for something that says error or exception. And that's silly.
I've never done this.
Oh, I've the amount of people that
I'm not patient enough to take a look at logs.
Okay, fair. Yeah, but the amount of people that I sort of have to like coach out of this habit of, no, like when you deploy, it should work. The pipeline should tell you that it's safe to deploy. Like, stop watching the logs. Right? it's this more of this idea of we should trust our tools. We should trust our scaffolding system.
Several comments.
Yeah, let me catch up. I mean, you guys are on fire today. I can't keep up, but it's cool. Okay, USB-A, moving on. Okay.
I think the USB-A issue is solved. I was right, and it's okay.
Dennis mentioned complexity. What's complexity today with coding delegation to AI, where lines don't matter anymore? I understand the risk, but not complexity here. It makes sense. So complexity has to do, so I generally lean towards the Kainevan usage of the word complexity. So Kainevan uses these 5 quadrants: chaos, simple, chaos, we don't know. And then there's, well, doesn't matter. I already got him wrong, but simple, complicated, and complex. And simple, complicated, and complex are the important parts that we wanna sort of understand. And generally, simple things have best practice, right? So you don't have to ask me how to implement it. It has an obvious solution. That would be extremely simple. Then you have complicated stuff. Complicated stuff might be, it might be a series of simple things that are wired together, and there's a lot of moving parts. So maybe it's a bunch of CRUD services and React and Svelte and deploying something in a database in the background, which individually are all simple. But then when you wire them together, there's some emergent complicated behavior, there's some asynchronicity involved, there's some failure scenarios involved that have to do with infrastructure. That's complicated, but not complex. There's just a lot of moving parts, and you need to coordinate different nuances of skill, different nuances of, you might need a DBA, a software engineer, a backend engineer, a front-end engineer, designer, a mobile engineer, and just coordinate, right? So it has high levels of coordination. Usually, complicated systems, you can analyze and think about them. There isn't an obvious solution, but you can tell the bad solutions from the good solutions. That's the simple and the complicated domain. And the complex domain is such a domain that is either unpredictable or unreasonable, right? So I can't lay out all the plans and pick the best solution purely based on thinking, right? I might actually have to go in and probe.
Yep.
Right. So, for example, A/B testing the color of the download button on e-commerce is a complex problem because it's so unpredictable that there is nothing we could possibly analyze without a large, complicated study or probing the system. Right. So I can't find the correct solution from analysis alone. There must be probing. So when I talk about complexity, I talk about things where conversation between an engineer and a subject matter expert, so only conversation, thinking, and analysis does not provide the answer. And it does not bring us closer to the answer. So there must be some deployment of something. We need to build something, give it to the customer, and see what happens. We might have some ideas about what is a goal and what is a non-goal, but in general, the correct answer can only be found by accident or by probing. We can still analyze and pretend we got the right solution the first time, or that we don't care about improving it. We just picked one because we liked it, but it's not necessarily the best solution. So when I talk about complex, I mean, I'm talking about things where people can talk about, reason about, analyze, plan, estimate, they try to predict what will happen, but it doesn't actually produce the correct outcome. So when it comes to complexity, okay, you have follow-up question, I'm explaining. Yeah, I'm being monologue baited all stream. This is great. Simple, complicated, complex, and you're looking for urgent. No, so the Kinefin framework goes from simple, complicated, complex, and then there's chaos. And then there's the unknown. We don't know which quadrant it belongs to. Right, so it's more this idea of how much thinking versus probing versus acting is necessary, right? Like, can you think, run an experiment, and then correct it? Or can you even not think and you just need to do a shot in the dark? Like, chaos is that I can't even pick a direction, I just need to stab at something. Like early stage proof of concept startups in the first few months are that chaotic space. I just need to do a stab in the dark and pick a direction, and maybe it's the wrong one, right? Like, that's usually what a pivot results in. I use the same framework with my engineers when I work for Meta to define complexity, which helped me align with their KPIs to get technical resources. Here, reassure my past actions, Dennis, thanks. Difficulty, complexity, frequency, and urgency is what I used. Yeah, so that is also useful. Predictability is risk related. I agree. So I like to use the CD3 framework for urgency, right? So I usually bring out this idea of value versus volatility of value, right? So urgency means that it's valuable this week, but not valuable next week, right? So such matters are urgent. There are things where the value is so high that it's still valuable tomorrow, it's still valuable next year, but it's so valuable that the cost of delay is enormous. Such matters are actually not urgent, but they come with a huge opportunity cost. They come with a huge cost of delay. Mm-hmm. Urgent matters actually don't have a cost of delay. That's why we call them urgent and not highly valuable, because urgent matters, for example, having a feature for a Black Friday bonus is extremely urgent if you're doing the project 2 weeks before Black Friday, because if you deliver the feature after Black Friday, then it's no longer valuable, right? So the value is volatile. There is a timeline and value goes up and up and up and up and up, or it like plateaus. And then after a certain date, delivering the feature is no longer valuable. It's as if we hadn't delivered it. Think of it like a shelf life. Like, so there are tickets in your system, in your backlog, and a few of them are urgent because their value dissipates or disappears if you don't deliver them by a certain date. That's not a deadline per se, but the value just goes away. Like, it's no longer valid. The value might come back on like a yearly cycle. For example, if you ever work with accountants, you know that nothing is important except February, when all the accounting stuff is done, and then everything is urgent, because if you don't get it done on week 2, then you can wait until the next year, right? So that is urgency. Most organizations sort of align themselves in this thinking and then do this language of, oh, this is complicated, we need to communicate urgency of handling the complicated stuff as soon as possible. And then this sort of verbal word salad sort of just dilutes everybody's ability to really reason about the problem. Because if it's really important and the value won't diminish over time, then it's just super valuable. It's just a high value thing, and we should obviously work on it. It's just a high priority, but it's not urgent. There is a high cost of delay of not taking the priority seriously, which speaks about discipline or incompetence, but communicating urgency for that is the stick. It's, when you could have just used the carrot. I mean, you could have just rewarded people for working on the right things rather than scaring them with urgency. If we don't get this done now, then we work on it next week. that's not useful. I usually do this with teams that are on a death march. Deadline, last minute issues. They stop doing TDD when it's like really, really urgent.
Most companies, though.
Yeah, most companies. And then the worst thing I always tell engineering leaders, like I imagine like leaders like Jakob. Like the worst thing you can do when you're approaching a deadline and it's not looking good is to move the deadline. Because the deadline implies we will sacrifice, and then it's over. Because if we didn't make it, then we didn't make it. We failed. We came last, or we came third, and then the race is over. And that's what a deadline means. The work stops on the date. But if you, as a leader, you communicate as we had a deadline to motivate you.
That was the deadline, I think.
This is silly.
That was the deadline.
No, but this is silly. Like I can see you the whole time. I can see you see me disconnect, which is completely ridiculous.
This is some form of RPC problem here.
Yes,
so WebRTC.
It is completely. So anyway, okay. Point being, using the deadline as a stick, and then say if we miss the deadline, tough luck. We still need to do it.
Make a new one.
That is the worst kind of.
We resurrect you because you've died, and then you do the next thing next day.
It's one of the best approaches towards using tests in deadlines is, hey, we have 20 important acceptance criteria. Maybe we used the word edge cases for them before. I don't know, but it's in complex feature. Here's the happy path, and it has 19 edge cases. I would write them all down. And then I would gauge the progress of the project based on how many of those cases we handle. And I would put that into the pipeline and actually use the pipeline as a project management tool. Right? Like that would be helpful, right? Like that would be a sane way of saying, okay, we have some scenarios. We are making scenario 16 and 17, and we're failing 18 consistently. We're going to continue fixing that.
Mike, are you actually a TDD practitioner? That would be an interesting thing to know. Because actually most people aren't. So many people are interested. Most people are not practicing TDD in my personal experience with the people I'm working with.
Yeah.
And they talk about that actually want it, but next year. It's a little bit like the New Year's resolution, but even more postponed into the future. So it's a little bit like that. So they do their software, it's working anyway, but I think many of the problems would be solved just by using that practice. Because it, as you said in the beginning, it solves so many issues, or it reveals a lot of issues as well.
It reveals, yes. It surfaces it surfaces incorrect assumptions, right? The assumption is, if I tell the developer and they're competent, they will obviously implement it correctly. But if you're wrong, now you need to ask the person to go check if it's working correctly. And now you're wasting their time, because that time could be spent just fixing the issue if there is one, right? So it creates this culture of chasing ghosts, of we just finished something, but we're not sure if it works, we need to check. And then there's this like huge value of, okay, I just checked and it took me an hour to check. And in that time, we got 2 new commits. Did those 2 new commits change my check? Or do we need to check again? Like, that's why we have automation. Like, that's the whole point with TDD, is that in theory, if I'm manually testing, I need to manually test everything every time a new commit comes in. And if we're not doing that, then maybe we're not taking our craft seriously. Maybe what we're building is actually not important enough. Or maybe we don't have clearly defined quality gateways. Because then doing really rapid on those commits and then taking 2 steps back to do, like, I don't know, dog fooding on Fridays on like a sprint demo is a huge, you're efficient, you're resource efficient 2 days in the week, and then you're chasing your own tail the rest of the week, and then you're just looking at the okay, this was productivity and that was meetings and testing, and we don't look at meetings and testing as if, we consider meetings and testing not to be part of the value stream. But you can make it part of the value stream by just saying, if you can't express, if the engineer and the product person having a conversation of, if you and I now can't in simple terms express what it is we want the feature to do, I'm not building it. Because I won't know what to look for, you don't know what to test for. We will just be talking in bugs, and our feedback loop will primarily, that's not what I wanted, rather than writing down, okay, what do you want? The transitioning from this binary conversation to this sort of fail-forward conversation of, okay, what happens then? What happens then? Where do we get this information? How do I know to do this check? Where did this information come from? Do I have the information the moment when I need it, or do I need to wait? Is there some synchronization concern? Event models help a lot with that. Just have like a storyboard of consequences of data, and test plans are really good ways of slicing down the behavior. When this happens, I get that. When that happens, the system does this. That's really useful to sort of frame it in the journey of the user of like, how do the pieces orchestrate. But you asked Mike if he's a TDD practitioner.
Yes.
He said,
I assume it's Mike. So
I'm Mike.
I'm Mike. I'm Mike.
Maybe it's Imimiki. Let's call him Imimiki. Imimiki. No, but it's not an I. It's an L, right?
So
LML, Mike. I don't know. Okay.
He sounds like a TDD practitioner.
TDD
are you a tech lead? So you said you're engineers. Are you a tech lead guy, or who are you? Tell me. Okay.
Mike says, skipping TDD for urgency is very simple. You ask for your project's sponsor written sign-off, then you let the product catch fire, and finally load, put mod, and let the leadership fight between themselves.
Okay. It took me a while. Actually, my generation probably. Or ours.
Oh, I see. No, we used to do that with slashes and with /\m. But I see now. Okay. Mike the Metalhead.
Oh, young guy. Oh.
Hey, it's my birthday in 2 days. I'm gonna be 37. We're about the same generation, Mike.
I'm feeling old.
The technical project managers who are integrating TDD as part of risk management initiatives due to many PR fires. Do you guys remember when Meta lost access to their login servers, including those physically access to servers without any backup access? So yeah. Research efficient is cool, but done will always be better than perfect. Mike is fine. I see. LML.
It's actually all true, right?
Yeah, so I hate having this TDD discussion from this context of it's like some weird dopamine loop where engineers don't have to use their brain cells. I don't know why it got that stigma or why it got that sort of assumption. TDD for me is a business concern. I want proof that I understand the system, and the easiest, cheapest way of me to prove that is I will write down what the system should do, and I will have a subject matter expert review it. Or I will have a different engineer review it before I build the system, because maybe I misunderstood. And it helps me sort of explore like the initial design, a walking skeleton of the system. And when engineers fail to explain what it is they're working on, maybe they're discussing 3 different projects. But this sort of fighting fires has multiple aspects to it. TDD helps us primarily solve this chicken egg problem of I wrote code, the code is not in the code base. The code in the code base has a bug. I got hit by a bus. And then Adrian comes along and reads the code, finds the bug, and then looks at it and says,
I will.
Is the bug supposed to be there? As
a rhetorical question.
No, as a real question of, okay, is anybody on the outside, like there's an API, does anybody on the outside rely on this bug? Like, was this a mistake? Or is it meant to be in the code base, or is it not meant to be in the code base? What was the intent of the developer? And that's what you have tests for. That's the problem we're solving. Did you intend it to work this way? Or did you not intend it to work this way? And for the intended check to be on a simpler level, on a lower level of complexity than the implementation itself, so that we use vaguer language in the test, and then we use implementation-specific technical language, like software, essentially, in the implementation, in the code. Right? Like that's the idea. Because if I can only express what the feature does by verbatim quoting what the software line by line is, I don't understand what it's doing. The whole point of software and abstractions and design is to use simpler concepts to explain complex ones, to explain complex implementation details, right? So that then when I have the concept, the person who has designed the system has correctly identified which axis of information is important and relevant to the behavior, and which axes of information are not relevant to the behavior. Right? So for example, I can implement division as A divided by B. Or I can hand roll the division. I can say, okay, I will subtract B from A until the result is no longer an integer. And then the previous answer is the answer, and the rest is the remainder. Right? So again, that's not efficient, but I can implement it that way. It's more of this idea of, did we already oversimplify about technical implementation details in our ask? Or if it came from a non-technical person, was the ask too vague? And usually the answer is somewhere in the middle, and it has to be explored. And the exploration has to be written down. And the conclusion has to be written down. We have decided to ship X. I implemented bugs voluntarily.
So I just wanted to tell the audience that Dennis is so happy today. It's a difference to those sessions.
I had a good week. I had a really productive week.
I'm so happy to see so many comments. I think it's a cool thing.
It's really cool. I just wanted to come back to this concept of, we're not teaching our teams to do TDD. The teams that I'm coaching, predominantly within the team, the TDD adoption is mostly the same as you would expect in the industry. Unless it's a really high-leaning, sort of extreme programming culture, right? Like it would have to be a high, sort of very focused extreme programming culture in order for everybody to be doing TDD. Because the primary purpose that we want to instill is responsibility. Is, if you ship software, how do I know it works? You know it works if the software can test itself. Right? So the value we want from TDD is that the software, at least on its critical paths, has a self-diagnostic mode. Right? So for example, my washing machine comes with its tests deployed. Right? So my washing machine won't run if it leaks water, or if it cannot drain water. Those are some of the core functionalities, not edge cases. Those are core functionalities. If it doesn't spin, if it doesn't drain, if it cannot pull water, it won't run. That's part of its core behavior. And incidentally, it's also part of its internal test design to figure out, can I build any of my behaviors up on those core features? If the core features don't work, then the configuration options also don't work. Right? So it's, the washing machine is actually that glue, that setting that you pick, but the feature, the capability of the washing machine is basically just timing, spinning, draining, rinsing, right? So it, and of course, a lot of other things, heating, etc., blah, 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 blah. Weight control, balance, it gets complicated real fast. But the idea is for critical functionality or a new feature that you add to a legacy system that doesn't have any tests should represent itself somewhere along the pipeline. the system that we're deploying into the cloud has these capabilities. Green means that all capabilities that are important have done a self-diagnostic. I think we're getting some spam, Adrian, on
good.
On Twitchy. I'm gonna block that account on Restream.
It is already deleted. Restream doesn't delete it from the feed.
No, I'm gonna delete it in the studio so it disappears from the.
I did that already.
Okay, and it didn't disappear.
It doesn't work today.
It didn't disappear. Wait, how do you align? Mike asks, how do you? Wait, it just jumped. Okay, how do you align the lingo for simplifying complex technical asks to non-technical persons? Honestly, just event modeling if they have some subject matter knowledge, or simplifying it down to like, how will you know it works? What will you be able to do once it's done? Or if we don't build it, I think that's a bug. I don't think it goes away. If we don't build it, what software would you use instead? Like, if you don't get the software, what would you do instead? So I can help understand. So it helps me understand what is it about my software that changes your workflow. Usually, I would start with that kind of conversation as like the outermost frame for then a discussion. Generally, time box it as well, like 30 minutes to not go too far off topic. Right. So generally, I would do the why conversation of if you can't explain it to me, but I don't understand, I'm not gonna build the software. What happens then? I don't build the software. What happens? What do you do? Like, what are you forced to do? What are you struggling with? What's your pain? And then they try to explain, okay, and how does my software solve that problem? So what does it do? What does it not do? What does it allow you to do? How does your behavior change when you have the software? What expectations do you create that might be new or might be unique to the kind of implementation I might provide you? And then you just have this conversation very quickly with somebody and they will just bombard you with details. And if you have an AI transcriber, that's usually enough as a starting point. But generally, we want to pick up jargon and key behaviors and non-behaviors. Sometimes it's actually very useful to just talk about the entire space and then just write down what we're not doing. Okay, we're not doing that. That's too complicated. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. What is the simplest thing that definitely solves some small problem today? And then we build up from that. Because usually it's not all or nothing, right? Like this whole right sizing and slicing of business requirements has to do with, we want to write down all the business requirements and then sort of forget this association that they are somehow connected, that they don't have to be built in order. And then that will then help you alleviate the sort of left to right pressure or top to bottom pressure. Usually business requirements come in like in a list and you think that the order is in some way important, which is why I like event modeling so much, because it bridges that dimension problem. It allows you to have this conversation of, okay, well, you gave me a list, well, that you definitely don't need. Like bullet number 7 you don't need unless I give you 3 first, right? So let's not do 7 right now, let's start with 3. Usually, sorry, Dennis. Yeah, you just flashbang me with another follow-up. You paid for 3 minutes for 2 years, Adrian. What's going on here? Sorry, Dennis. When you say critical for the product or critical for the client, big difference here. Pleasing short-term doesn't help you solve your relationship long-term and hurt the product in the end. So I'm trying to understand. Critical for the product or critical for the client? That sounds like 2 different value streams. I mean, I understand generally it's not that simple. But you would have to narrow it down to the overall business is valuing opportunity costs that we're not discussing. So they are framing down with a budget, right? Like the business will always constrain you not to go all in with a single client, because that is subject to recency bias. The business would ideally like to serve all clients, but they can't, so they have opportunity costs and they need to triage them. So they need to prioritize their attention. So the business will always constrain you down. Having those constraints is healthy. The client will always want you to favor them over other clients, right? If you have like this kind of client relationship, if it's a multi-vector project management or product alignment task, or if you have like custom software for a certain client, or maybe there's an internal team with an ask and an external team with an ask, and you have to combine those two like a complex initiative. So generally it's enough to have the business constrain you down and say, whatever you're doing for this client right now, make sure you don't go over this budget. And then whatever you're doing with the client, you aim the conversation the other way around of how do we get to that amount of value as fast as possible. And then the team makes sure that they even out the budget spend velocity with the value creation velocity. Like that's a sort of more of a numerical attitude to that question, right? So it doesn't have to be critical only for one constraint. Ideally, we work with both constraints and focus on not making too many assumptions. Like we don't want to make the assumptions that we can spend the entire budget to then maybe provide value at the end, right? Usually software teams make this mistakes of thinking, oh, we have a deadline, so the correct answer is we give you full value or no value, and the answer we get at the end of the deadline, of the time box, right? So the answer comes at the end of the budget. And I like working with smaller teams, with smaller organizations, more on this idea of let's assume it's not worth building, or let's assume the priorities will change, the team will change, the client will change their mind, the market might react, especially if it's a long project. So let's assume that there will be some pitfalls along the way that require reprioritization. So let's try to build the important stuff, the critical stuff, as soon as possible, and maybe save as much as the budget as possible if we turn out to be wrong. That would be my healthy attitude towards it. Because otherwise you default down into this, let's try to cram as much as possible into the budget, or let's try to work as feature dense as possible until we run out of deadline, right? And both of those are sort of very hopeful, wishful thinking strategies that I've never seen pan out very well. At least not in organizations where that matters. You might be doing some like weird benign project that nobody cares about, and then there's no consequences for choosing a suboptimal strategy because every project is kind of a fluke and nobody's analyzing outcomes. In a small team, it's the dev call. In bigger businesses, the manager's call. Yeah, so it also depends. Is it, is there 5 devs, or is it 5 stakeholders across 5 organizations and there's 200 devs involved, right? So it's more about this. Is it a senior engineer concern, tech lead concern, staff engineer concern, principal concern, or is it, a regional CTO's concern about what it is we're building? Of course, the scale of the project will impact it. And I haven't met a senior dev who can manage up but survive illogical ordered tasks, which makes them crazy often. 2 different mindsets for sure. Yeah, I think that all of what we're talking about, especially instilling this responsibility, happens at a senior plus level. I think TDD is difficult because it combines I think the adoption of TDD is difficult because TDD is just like the tip of the iceberg. And really what we want is all of those positive behaviors that we would expect from like a really seasoned veteran engineer. And that's just unrealistic. So we need to make we need to make the assumption that a senior engineer, so somebody that is getting into that sort of very autonomous, responsible, professional mindset, who treats their work, their colleagues, their clients respectfully and communicates well, and even that is already a high bar. You're treating this whole system as, unless we have proof that this is a very competent engineer leading a very competent team, we need to create space for there to be mistakes. So the mistakes should be caught often. Should be caught early. Sorry, I always, when it comes to project management and product management, that's usually what I work with the most with engineering teams. I usually instill the sort of project management advice to senior engineers you're talking about, so people below this bar, is these two very simple principles of things should go yellow before they go red, and bad news never gets better over time, right? So most problems on like this senior level that you're challenging, that most senior engineers don't have this skill, they happen because engineers sit on bad news. They know that there's something wrong and they try to correct it, and they sort of do overtime, or they try to hide it, or they're hiding problems on a feature branch somewhere and then only surface it when it's time to merge. That, or their idea of does it work or not, is completely binary. It doesn't degrade into yellow first, right? So they don't have this idea of, if we're on time, if you have 10 tickets, if we're on time, we do 10 every day. We do 2 every day this week to be finished this week. If it's Monday afternoon and nothing's finished and there's 3 things in progress with a team of 2, then the project is not going well, and we need to talk about it tomorrow. To talk about the slowdown effect at the earliest possible convenience, rather than thinking, oh no, today was a fluke because we had a lot of meetings. Like, no. We had a lot of meetings, we're not productive. We treat that as a problem, we talk about it tomorrow. And to act on it immediately, right? So most engineering projects leave so much productivity on the table that it's really easy to just squeeze out 25-50% from just a few simple hacks with people who are senior. And then long term, you have these catch-on effects of, yeah, maybe it's easy if you manage them, but then the question is, if you stop managing them, do they pick up the discipline? Do they pick up the skill? Or do you need to keep reminding them? Are they learning? Can they learn? Are they interested? Are they being rewarded? Is there an outside incentive that makes them act weird? Is there 3 stakeholders? Generally, what I found is normally these kinds of senior engineers who make these kinds of mistakes have 3 bosses, or they have 4 different stakeholders pushing 4 different priorities, and 2 of them are aligned, but the 3rd and the 4th are not. And it's usually sticky stuff like this that a senior engineer would complain about, but it requires a staff engineer to fix. Like, that's usually what I'm working on the most as a coach, is to just figure out what the hell fell through the cracks. Because if I can see that the team is not stable, there is clearly an easy sort of leading indicator for that. And if you can surface that, that's usually enough. In my experience, just surfacing that, if I can see that the project is not going according to plan and the managers don't see it, if I just surface the data to them and actually ask them, hey, here's the data, please look at it. Don't say, I looked at it, no, it was just a fluke because that person was sick and it's a Monday, we're heavy on meetings. No, please look at it. Person's sick, Monday meetings, now we're behind schedule, please act. Scope reduction, talk to them. Are we working on the important thing? Are we not working on the important thing? Are we fixing little architectural issues, or are we past the critical path or not even started on the critical path? Just take those little conversations very seriously, very early on in the project. Don't delay them. I think we need to sort of stop our conversation here, Mike. I really enjoyed this. We should have had a hot seat joining with Mike on this. I think that would have been awesome. In a small team, it's we already read that. Is the budget discussion leveraging a lot of workforce can hinder massively the continuity of your business? Hope I'm clear. Yeah, so generally, I see following critical path with regular checkups for prioritization. Makes sense now. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yes. Suboptimal strategies. Highly motivating. I'll have to this talk. Then a follow-up question related to senior devs. Why are they completely left out in developing their soft skills to uber important non-technical parts of their jobs, like executive communication, situational leadership? As a coach, I'm sure you know the best. Yeah, so you generally engineers become engineers because they like talking to computers more than they like talking to humans. So that is a natural selection bias. You just go in with the assumption that they don't like talking about bad news and they don't behave well on stage. And sometimes I coach teams where everybody has stage fright and they turn their cameras off on meetings. Right? They don't want to turn the cameras on, right? Like sometimes it's just that basic and you need to work up from where they are. Like how can somebody have executive communication skills and situational leadership if they're afraid to turn on their camera on their main meeting of the week? Right? Sometimes it's just presence. They don't have the presence. They think their body is there to move their brain to the correct Jira ticket, and then have their fingers command cloud code to churn out a PR. Like a lot of engineers are just wrapping their head around the complexity of their craft and profession, and oversimplifying it into the areas that they like, and they neglect the areas they don't like. I think that's perfectly human. As a coach, what did you see the most between miscommunication and non-communication? I think that miscommunication and non-communication. One of my, and not even Rasi or Racy, but I usually come into teams to fill in the cracks. I usually shadow a lot of calls, and I usually go to the leader first. So what I do is I work with engineers, provide them with training. I work with executive leadership to, if necessary, change key personnel in leadership positions, because if those are wrong, it's hopeless. So you can't do it bottom up. And then I work on the process in between. Okay, if we got the right leaders, if they have the right support, if we have the right training at the bottom, are the incentives correct? Or does one engineer have 3 bosses and one boss has 0 report? Like, where are then the inconsistencies between the organizational structure and what it is we're doing? That's what I'm doing. When it comes to productivity or sort of communication versus non-communication, it usually comes down to this idea of, if I just pay attention as a coach, I can usually spot problems 2 to 3 days before they do. And then I just sit around and gather data, and then I show them the data. It's like, I knew there was a problem. I was 80% sure there's going to be a problem. This is the first time. Why do I see it and you don't? Right? And then they will usually tell me, the leader, well, I kind of did see it, and I asked the engineer, and the engineer said everything's okay. Okay, so that's now information, right? That we saw it was risky. So, and that engineer misjudged. And it was wrong judgment on our part to trust that engineer's judgment without verification. So it's your opinion versus my gut feel, and the data says we're off track, and we went with the gut feel, right? And it's that kind of conversation that we then surface or have it in private if it's I don't trust that engineer, if it's that kind of dynamic. And then we get those conversations from I trust you, I don't trust you, and what is the status of the project, and we move them into the pipeline. Tests, data, ticket. If we're going according to plan, this ticket will be closed on Tuesday. And then we communicate in advance. If we're going according to plan, this stuff will be done on that milestone. If we don't reach it, we are immediately executing plan B. That's the point of a roadmap. It's meant to have intersections for if the road is closed, we will use route B. That's the point of a roadmap, to know when you don't reach the milestone what to do instead. Or if you do reach it, then you sort of course correct and see where you're going next. So it's those kind of conversations that I help out with. It's sticky, it's completely irrational. There's people, politics, engineers not wanting to speak up, or engineers being sort of too much in focus, or they don't have the right relationships. Or there's CTOs who are wearing an engineering manager hat, and then the vertical between the product owner and the CTO is not clear with regards to their authority if they're in the room at the same time, and then they overrule each other or are inconsistent in their communication in front of a large audience. So it's that kind of stuff that really gets into the weeds of what it is that I do as a coach. I feel it's so easy to convince someone to have the skills to avoid the most interacting with people while still working well. I think it's just a question of narrative. Last question, I promise. What would you suggest someone to try when he faces a deprioritization of his dependent collaborative initiative? Unless crypto path related, but absolutely. What would you suggest someone to try when he faces a deprioritization of his dependent collaborative initiative? I would always say, don't look at the budget as this amorphous thing where I have 100K budget and now it has a priority. But if you went from 100K to 20K, the priority on the 20K remains the same and the priority on the 80K got lowered. I had to always break it down to, my big project was a series of small increments. So if we lower the priority, I just lost the tailing end of the increments, not the leading ones, right? And if I got down prioritized, maybe that happened because I put the really important stuff into the tail and people got caught wind of that and tried to incentivize me to move it into the leading part.
I actually need to go. I wish you a great day. You can just keep on.
Sorry, Adrian. This turned
I
out
actually need to go. Bye
really
bye.
solo conversation. Thank you, Adrian. Unclear roles. Yeah, Mike. Let's have this conversation offline and or next week. Thank you so much for driving a lot of the conversation. No. You said I'm gonna hold you to your word to last question. Let's continue next week or offline. Happy to continue on LinkedIn. LinkedIn would be my best place to find me right now. What if budget is not part of the prioritization process? We don't necessarily have visibility in the priorities. Yeah, that is something that is always an easy solution. Just assume that if it's not important, you wouldn't be working on it. So there is something of importance inside the project that you are working on, and maybe it's just disagreement of what that is exactly. In every project, there's a bunch of craft that you can cut off, and people usually down budget because they want the really important stuff, but not the nice to haves. And budgeting is a way to squeeze the important stuff away from the nice to haves. And sometimes a must for one person is a nice to have for another. And then if there's political games, there's usually some tug of war going on of, I want my must have before you get your nice to have. And the product vertical disagrees with the keeping the lights on vertical of engineering, and it disagrees with the nice to haves or the SLAs of the infra team or platform engineers who have requested some breaking change to be done or sort of deprecated. It's usually something like that. Yeah, and sometimes it's just because it comes from the CTO and the CPO disagrees. And then it's just this sort of tug of war of, yeah, okay, like I agree, or I signed up for it if you can deliver it under 2 weeks, and then after that I cancel it and I want my other thing, right? So it's usually something like that. But it's usually a right-sizing problem. It's usually a delaying value too far into the future and trying to bite off a too big chunk and maybe get some refactoring done or some re-architecting done or some cost reduction done along the way. And it's usually the sign that a simple project absorbed some craft and it became complicated. So the budgeting is the organization's immune response for complicated issues, scope creeping. Okay, now on that note, see you next week. Ciao.